I started getting an education in product design, so I'm supposed to be a designer making things that last mostly, like furniture or ceramics or maybe cars or whatever. And while I was a student, I was doing lots of material experiments because I wanted to find my material. So people start to do things in the wood workshop, and I went to the ceramics workshop and I did some knitting, and I did all these material kind of things, and I went to all these workshops. But then when I went to my house again in the evening, I went to my own little workshop, which actually was my kitchen. And being in my kitchen, I found all my kitchen tools to be my workshop tools. And opening my cupboards, I found all my stuff in my cupboard to be my material. And you can simply say that putting food and design together, you would become a food designer, which could be true. But then afterwards I started thinking, if I was a food designer, it would imply that I would design food. And I really think that food is perfectly designed by nature. Nature does a really good job. Just imagine a red cabbage sliced in two. How beautiful is that? I can't do that. Nature does that. So if you start to think about food and design, I think it's more interesting to look at eating, the act of eating, instead of food itself. And if you think about the act of eating, then you suddenly enter into a whole new world that is related to food. And I think that's really the interesting thing. And I think design in that case is just a tool to expose your message. So it's more about design thinking than actually making a shape of something. Now, working with food and design for 10 years, I look back at my work and I see a kind of mythology. And I started to collect all these inspirations that I had during this period of time. And I developed this kind of philosophy. Actually, the philosophy is not an answer. It's really only more questions. So I'm actually trying to collect questions, because I think questions are the thing that trigger curiosity and trigger design and creative thinking. It's interesting that a lot of designers, they're always occupied with people. So they make everything for people, but they forget about this one thing that we really need to survive, which I think is a bit curious. And even before anything that we think we need, so we need housing and we need shelter and we need sex, we really need food first, because we can't even have sex if we don't have food. So I think food is this very basal thing that creative people really, really need to start looking at. And I think we have to look beyond only making beautiful food or tasty food. So I'm just going to guide you through these 7 points. It starts with senses, and that's obvious. Everybody that's working with food uses senses, and you can ask many questions. Why don't we like blue tomatoes? Why do we eat more when food makes a crispy sound? Why does the smell of coffee make you sick when you get chemotherapy? Science, dietary science, but also all the other kind of sciences that you can think of, all work with food. I don't know if you know what in vitro meat is. In vitro meat is this kind of product that they take from the stem cells of an animal and they put it in a laboratory and they actually breed meat. And there are a lot of big companies investing a lot of money in that. So we can actually eat real meat, which is made without killing an animal, which is a bit scary for many people and a bit exciting for big companies. But then you can wonder, does it have a soul? Why didn't anybody have food allergies 50 years ago? I have no idea. If you know answers, then you can tell me afterwards, because I'm very curious as well. Is obesity an illness? Culture. Food culture. Everywhere around the world there are people living and eating. Everybody needs to eat. That's what all binds us together, what's connecting us. We're all eating in very different ways. We're all using very different ingredients, different ways of preparing. Can we use food to create understanding between different social groups? Can we use food to have integration within a country? Can we create new rituals? Technique. When you're a designer, of course, you look at food also just as a material to make things with. Is there any use in putting a potato into a 3D milling machine? Who knows? Maybe we can create something beautiful. Is using organic fuel made from edible material a sustainable solution? If vegetarian alternatives are made from shapeless soy protein, why don't we invent new kinds of vegetarian meat? Or why don't we create new animals? Nature and education. Why do children think milk comes from the factory and the forest smells like shampoo? I was asking this question to Procter & Gamble, and they said, yeah, that's what we did about the shampoo. Can you blame people who grew up in wartime to want to have strawberries in winter? Psychology, and I think this is the most interesting one actually, because I think food and eating is happening more in your brain than in your belly. So why do we eat when we're not hungry? Maybe we're in a social situation. Maybe we have some routines during the day. Why do we reward our children with sweets? And we are surprised that we want comfort food when we feel sad. Why do I dislike the idea of eating insects while I do like to eat shrimp? Society, and I think this is maybe the most urgent one. Do you know how far your lunch has traveled? Why do chicken get more antibiotics than needing children in a third world country? How many fish are left in the sea? Why are bees dying? All these messages, they can be very alarming, but they can also be very inspiring for people to create new creative ideas. All right, so that's the first part. So maybe you're wondering, okay, all these questions, so what do you do with that? Well, I can start saying that I just did a very tiny bit of that because there's so much to do in this field. But I'm going to show you a few examples. I have two businesses. One is a design studio where we do art projects but also restaurant projects, but I'm also working for food industry, and I have a restaurant where I can try out all these things together. The first thing I'm showing you is actually the first thing I ever did with food. I was still a student at the Design Academy, and we were supposed to do something with the color of white. And then I was thinking, white? What is the meaning of that color? White is a symbolic color. In many cultures it's the color of death. And I was thinking about death and the rituals around death and the rituals around mourning. And in many cultures, food is a very large part of the ritual of burying a person. So this is a white funeral dinner, and all the ingredients of this dinner are white. And I don't have any education in cooking, so what I did, I just went to the market and I bought lots of white food and I combined it together, and surprise, it actually tastes really good together. And I think sharing is very important when it comes to eating. What you see here is many years later. In the meantime, people have always been asking me, please make us a Christmas dinner. And I thought, I don't want to do Christmas dinners. They're so full of cliches and decorations and everything. But then Droog Design, they asked me to do a Christmas dinner. And I thought, okay, well, what is Christmas really about? And I think Christmas is about sharing and being together. That's the bottom line. So what I did here is a very simple intervention. It's just a tablecloth, and it works like this. And the reason for doing this is that actually everybody is physically connected to each other. If I pull here, you can feel it there. But also, if you just have your heads and your hands stick into a space, you're actually kind of equal because you don't see your identity by your clothing. And people actually start to feel connected to each other. And this is the nicest part is when you go to the toilet. This was in Japan. I was really scared to do it there because of all the protocol. But actually I noticed there that once people got into this tablecloth, they started to behave very freely, like children. It's not only the setting, it's also the food. And what you can see here is that this girl has a plate, and this plate is cut in two. It's very simple. She has melon, the other person has ham. Ham and melon is such a classical combination. You don't have to tell people what to do. They will just start sharing. And sometimes we do that with mozzarella and tomato. It's the same kind of idea. The main course is one person gets a whole big piece of rib. The next person gets a whole lettuce with croutons and dressing and everything on top. The third person gets a whole pumpkin with seeds and nuts and everything in. Last person gets the potatoes. People start to share. That's a kind of common worldwide thing that people just do. I don't want to lock people up in my design. I think it's very important to give people the freedom to do what they want. These people that are incorporating in my experiences. They're part of the design. It's not finished when it's on the table. It's finished when they take the food in their belly, when they take it home. Maybe it's even finished when it's at the toilet. Someone last told me, hey, actually what you're designing is shit. And I think that's a very nice thought. This is Uni. Uni is my daughter. Here she was a little bit younger. She's now 5. She's cute, she's perfect, she's wonderful, but she didn't really want to eat her vegetables. And I thought, oh my God, that's a really bad advertisement. What I did is I invented her with all the children from her daycare, and I said, okay, today we're going to make jewelry. And for the boys I said we're going to make bling bling. And I gave them lots of vegetables, and I told them the only tools they got was their teeth. I did this because I read in this article that children have to taste something 7 times before they will start adapt to a flavor. And while the children were actually nibbling the shapes of their jewelry, they were eating a lot. Children are an interesting group, I think, when it comes to this matter. And this is a project I did for a pediatrics clinic in New York, in the Bronx. And they have a very big problem with obese children. And I wanted to give them a positive switch, because now their connotation with food is always negative. They know it's bad for them to eat unhealthy food, but they don't know how to change their habits. So what I did is I presented them snacks in all the colors of the rainbow, and I color-coded these snacks with positive assumptions. And here you can see all the snacks, and on top you can see the positive associations that the children can get with the food. For example, red gives you energy, blue makes you relax, but it also says green makes you rich, for example, yellow makes you to have a lot of friends, and in this case the children can choose for their food in a different way. They can say, hey, I'm going to eat green because I want to be rich. And in that way, they actually change their way of thinking about the food into a positive thing, instead of, this is bad for me, this is good for me, and I'm feeling negative about myself. This is a toothless candy box. It was just an illustration for a book. I was wondering how it would be if you have fake teeth. So this is a box with sweets that you can eat when you take your teeth out, and they're really easy to eat without your teeth. And actually now I'm working on a malnourishment project in the Netherlands for a hospital. It's a very big issue. Another speaker today talked about malnourishment, and seriously, we don't really notice that in the Western world this is really happening. But a lot of people that are maybe obese, they can be malnourished. And especially older people that are in hospitals have this problem. These are icebergs made of marshmallow. They can melt in your hot chocolate. It's for kind of inner global warming. These clouds are also marshmallows. They're made with real rain. This is a national tap water tasting. In Holland we have one of the purest tap waters in the world, but we just don't seem to care. We wash our cars with it, we flush our toilets with it. Nobody really appreciates it. Lots of people drink water from bottles. And what I notice is when you actually travel through the country, that in many places the water tastes really different. And I thought, what a curious thing. So what I did is I had this huge empty water bassin, and I had someone travel through the country with a van collecting 12 tap waters from the 12 capitals. And people could go in and actually taste the tap water, which significantly tastes really different. And I'm sure that if you do that here, you can see that too. And in this way, I just wanted to make people a bit more aware of the quality of their tap water. And maybe they could talk about it like you do with wine. You talk about the terroir of the wine, where it comes from. And now maybe you could say, hey, tonight we're going to eat fish, so we need some Rotterdam tap water, and tomorrow we eat meat, so you have to go to Amsterdam because that's the best tap water for meat. This is a sugar spoon. You can stir it in your tea. And this is a lollipop made from sugar, and it shows what sugar does to your body. And this is the last project I'm going to show you for now. It's very dear to me because this is a project I did in the Historical Museum in Rotterdam, and they had an exhibition about the Second World War. And you might know that in Rotterdam, at the end of the Second World War, there was a long period of starvation, of hunger. And in this museum, they wanted to have this exhibition and asked me to do the opening snacks or the welcoming bites. And what I did is I went to the Resistance Museum and I got some original war recipes from that time, and I just prepared them. I didn't change anything about them. I presented them as a ration. And when people entered, I gave them a coupon, and with the coupon they could get some surrogate coffee, and with the surrogate coffee they got their ration. And what happened is that people actually got back memories from that time. There were a lot of people that survived the war, and by eating this food, suddenly 60 years they didn't eat this food. So suddenly the food went into their bellies, but it also went to their brains in a way by giving them back memories. And I didn't intend for that to happen, but it did happen. And that made me realize that when you're a designer, you can choose for any kind of material to work with. But if you work with food, you can actually get so close to a human being that you can touch its emotions. And for me, that is a very big reason to work with food. And eat love, that's what I wish you all. And that's what I have to tell you.